Okay, we're starting.
We're good now. This is John, and this is John's mock commercial check ride. This might be the nicest mock check ride you ever have in your life. But I am a just regular old double I. I'm not a DPE. This video is for entertainment purposes only, and just for you to watch if you are studying for your commercial check ride. And John can introduce himself.
So, hi. I fly out of Cross Keys 17 November. It's in South Jersey, just outside of Philly. I got my private last January 2024, and I have my instrument rating. I got that in the summer of 2024, and now I'm working on my commercial.
Nice. So I'll be asking John some questions, just kind of like it would be in his regular commercial check ride. Obviously, there are some limitations to what we can do because we are not in the same place, but I will just be asking him questions just like in his check ride that's coming up towards the end of the month, right?
Yep, on the 29th.
End of January? Yeah. So we'll look at a little cross country that he did. We'll talk about that navlog, and we can just kind of start from the beginning again. So John, what are some privileges and limitations to a commercial check ride applicant? What would someone need to have that wants to go and take the commercial check ride?
So you need to be 18 years old. You need to be able to read and speak English fluently, and you need to have done all the aeronautical knowledge and experience requirements from Part 61. So that would include like any of the cross-country flights, any of the other training requirements, solo flights, things of that nature.
Are you Part 61 or are you 141?
Part 61.
Part 61, nice. Cowboys. Nice. Okay, you can keep going.
Okay. Yeah, so then I guess another nice thing about having a commercial certificate, it allows you to now fly for hire, which you weren't able to do as a private pilot. But then, of course, there are some limitations with flying for hire. So, like, I don't know.
Yeah, don't get yourself on a rabbit.
Yeah, I don't want to do that.
So you talked about kind of maybe briefly what kind of medical you would need for that.
Okay, so you would to have your commercial act as a commercial pilot, you need to have a second class medical, and for just to take the check ride, you need a third class.
Yeah, and then I think what I'll do is I'll just act like this is a regular check ride, and then anything, I don't know, I might or might not clear things up because DPEs are not supposed to teach you anything in your check ride, but okay. Sometimes I might say something, I might not. But when I edit the entire video, I'll go ahead and just kind of put like any any corrections to anything either I said that was wrong or that John said that was not correct. Do you have any idea what the hour requirements are for Part 61?
Yeah, so you need to have 250 total hours. I forget how it breaks down for like how many hours you need in an airplane. I believe you need 50 hours in an airplane. I believe 100 PIC hours. And then there's like some of the cross-country requirements. So there was cross-country 250 miles in a straight line distance. You have to go to 3 points, and you have to...
What's the important thing about that 250 nautical mile cross-country?
What's the important thing?
There's an important thing about that. People sometimes.
So like it would need to be solo, or if you have an instructor on board, you would need
It has to do with the original point of departure.
Oh, so from the first place to the second place, it needs to be 250 miles?
Yeah. I will go ahead and when I edit this video, I'll put the reg up, but that's just something to keep in mind of. People will sometimes not do the straight line distance of 250, or they don't do it from the right point. So that's something that your DPE could bring up in the check ride. Moving on, there's some other minor like hour requirements, but typically if you kind of can give a couple off the top of your head and you sound confident, DPE will probably move on. So that's what I'm doing. So you talked kind of briefly about people that are commercial pilots that are able to fly for hire or compensation. What are some of the definitions for those?
So you're not able to, or you shouldn't hold out. So that's like you can't go to like an FBO and advertise like your flying business and saying, "Hey, I'm going to fly you from here to here." Like you can't put business cards up or ads, things of that nature.
Hmm. You can't?
Not under. Well, I guess you could, but then
Oh, so let's backtrack a little bit. So what
okay.
are the privileges of a commercial pilot? What are things that you can do?
So you can fly for hire. So like, let's say
Compensation or higher, right?
compensation or
Yeah.
hire. Yeah. So like if you have like your own plane, you would
Yeah, and
be
you can fly people, you can fly other things that are not people.
you can fly cargo.
That's part of it. Yeah, you can fly cargo. And then um, you talked a little bit about holding out. Do you know the definition for that?
Let's see if there's. I have the AC. It's
The
one.
AC, nice.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's right in there. It spells it out for you. There's 4 parts.
yeah. So it's so I guess for common carriage, it's a holding out or willingness to transport persons or property from place to place for compensation.
There
Holding
you
out.
for compensation or higher. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep.
So yeah, so
Nice.
signs are like advertising is like a form of holding out, but then there's also like a contract limitation. So if you have like a bunch of contracts that might look like you're holding out, but that would be something you might have to settle in court with a
Sure.
judge.
So I'll give you a scenario. So if I was a company that you wanted to work for, and I say, "Hey, John, come work for me." If I'm asking you if you would like, if I'm offering you a job, and let's say you don't have a type rating in the plane that you would be flying with my company, can you accept that job?
So I guess the plane
If you're
is.
not currently rated, can you accept that job?
I believe you would be able to accept it, and then you wouldn't be able to fly until you get the type rating. So whether it would be like the company provides the training for the type rating, or you get that independently.
Yeah. Yeah, you can totally accept that job. Um, I'll try and think of a couple different examples, but what are some things that you could do for compensation or higher? What are like some examples of some jobs?
So you can be. I mean, there's the whole list in 119.1, but just a couple things off the top of my head. It would be like a survey pilot. You could be a CFI. You can do banner towing. You can do um, like scenic tours. You could do
Sure.
firefighting. I mean, there's a whole list in 119.1. I can pull that up real quick.
Yeah, no, you don't need the whole thing. That's pretty good. There's like a list of maybe like 10 plus things that jobs that you could do as a commercial pilot. Moving on a little bit. What do you know about common carriage or private carriage?
So common carriage, that would be, um, I guess, going back to what we were talking about before with holding out. So that would be like if you're, I guess, like advertising saying, "Hey, I'm gonna fly you like in my plane from here to here. You just have to pay me." That would be more of like a common carriage type operation, and then you might need a 135 or a 125 operating certificate.
Yeah. Yeah, another thing that I have that I no longer remember because this information, as you move on, CFI will hit you like a ton of bricks and you'll have to enter a lot of new information in. But when I did my commercial check ride, I just looked up some companies. And so I had like a couple of examples that I could give like right off the top of my head for um, just specifically for that question. What else do we have here? What about a wet or a dry lease?
So in a wet lease, I believe that would be someone is providing you a plane and a pilot, whereas in a dry lease, you're just being provided a plane. So with a dry lease, then you would be able to do that operation, whereas with a wet lease, then you would need some sort of operating certificate or LOA from the FAA.
Okay, yeah, that's like the pretty much just like the common definition for that. It gets a little more technical if they're talking about like operating certificates, but That's getting pretty insane. That's getting pretty technical. What else do we have on here? As a part of the things that you could get asked. Talked about that. We talked about medical. How about distinguishing between proficiency versus currency?
So currency is just what you need to do to be legal. So like for example, for your like day landings, you would need to do 3 takeoff and landings within a 90-day period, and that just allows you to just fly with passengers and fly legally. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be like very safe. So let's say like you do your 3 takeoff and landings, and then 88 days later you're like, hey passenger, come fly with me. You may not have the best landings in the world. They may not be safe. Like if you have like a crazy crosswind component that day, you may have a lot of side loading. You may just overall you're just not going to be safe. So proficient pilot would be flying a lot more often, would be flying in like different types of weather conditions, and you're gonna have a better chance of being safe.
Yeah. Just kind of circling back to common carriage, because my brain is still warming up here. It's been iced over, and now we are heating it, so information is coming back to me. What's kind of like a way that you would be able to distinguish if you would be holding out or not holding out? What's like the biggest kind of like giveaway that there would be?
I'm not sure what you mean.
So if there was like money involved, like if they offered to pay you, and then if they're asking you to provide the service, or like if they ask you, you could.
Yeah, but like if you're like offering or like willing to do the service.
Yeah. And another thing to think about is the ownership of the plane. Of who owns the plane. So could you use like your flight school's plane to do a service for someone that was going to pay you for it?
No. So like if it's like I'm renting the plane, then that's not going to be that's not going to work. But like let's say like you're renting the plane and then you're hiring me to be your pilot, then that would be allowed. Okay.
What else do we have here? Do you remember the definition of a complex airplane?
Yeah, so it has to have retractable landing gear.
It's a random one, but every once in a while, you forget.
Yeah. So retractable landing gear, flaps, and a constant speed propeller.
Almost.
Flaps, landing gear. Gosh, I can't think of the third one.
A controllable pitch.
Oh, okay, controllable pitch propeller.
Yeah. I don't know. Ooh, I have a good one. Let's talk about nighttime, and then we'll get into how that kind of plays into like this section in currency. Do you remember the 3 definitions of night? I know this is a private level question, but you forget.
So I guess like the very first definition would be from sunset to sunrise, you need to have your position lights turned on. And then from the end, I always forget how to phrase this, but I believe it's from the beginning of civil twilight until the end of civil twilight, you're able to log nighttime. And then an hour before sunrise and an hour after sunset, then you're able to log night landings for currency.
I'm going to ask you a question about if you can carry passengers at night. So what would be the restriction as a commercial pilot that you wouldn't be able to carry passengers at night?
You would need to have an instrument rating.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, that makes sense. And then there's another follow-up with that of there's actually 2 things that you can't do if you don't have an instrument rating. One of them is carriage of passengers for hire in an airplane at night, and then there's another one.
So you're not able to do to take them like a flight more than 50 miles.
Yep. Yeah, you can't take them on a cross country. Okay. I think that's pretty good for pilot qualifications. Airworthiness? How do you feel about airworthiness?
Yeah, I feel pretty good about
Pretty
that.
good
Mhm.
in the preventative maintenance department and MELs and KOELs.
Yeah.
What does your airplane have?
Like in terms of like an MEL or a KOEL?
Yeah,
It actually has neither. So, yeah, it doesn't have either of those in the BOH.
nothing.
Yeah,
So
no,
then
not even like an
you
equipment list or anything. Or
so then how do you don't have an equipment list in you
nope.
not at all, really.
Hmm.
Interesting. Okay. So how do you figure out if you need something for flight or
So
if you can go without something?
I guess the very first thing to look at would be 91205. So then just depending on the type of operation that you're doing, whether you need to look at like the day VFR equipment, the night VFR, or the IFR equipment that's in there. You would need to make sure that you have all that. You would need to make sure that the plane conforms to its type. So anything listed in the type certificate datasheet, the TCDS, would have to be operable.
And you know how to find that for your aircraft?
Yeah, I think the website is drs.faa.gov, and then I'm pretty sure, and the exact form for 172 is 3 Alpha 12.
Yeah, you just look for the model. Yeah, you just type the model in and your plane will pop up.
Yeah, so basically the TCDS and then anything in 91205 you would need to have as operable. If there's some weird like equipment that an AD tells you that you need to have, then you would need to have that. And then also, sorry.
No, it's okay. You're just offering a lot of information. So for if you did discover something was inoperative, what do you do?
So I guess you would need to make sure that it's in either of those documents, 91205 or the TCDS. And if it's not, like, let's just say it's like, I can't think of an or like, let's say it's like the attitude indicator, and you're flying like day VFR. That's not a required piece of equipment. So what you could do is you can have it placarded as inop and disable it somehow, like if there's like a circuit breaker associated with it. And then there would also need to be an entry in the maintenance logbook for that.
Anything else you need to do? So remind me what you said for all of that again.
So placard inop, disable it in some way, and then maintenance logbook.
Yep. Yeah. And then you make the decision
Mm-hmm.
whether to or to not go.
Yeah.
Because you always have a decision. Nice. Yeah. There isn't a ton for airworthiness for commercial. It's pretty much just kind of like, are you able to talk through the inoperative equipment kind of like flowchart in your head. I don't know if you've ever seen one of those before, but it could also ask you about like a special flight permit, but that's kind of a common question that you've probably already been asked 100 times. So with that, we can move on. Oh boy. You said your DPE was big on weather.
Yeah, he likes weather.
Really, that's kind of uncommon for a DPE to want to talk about weather. That's like super. They normally don't like that. What kind of things is he big on?
I wasn't able to find out what exactly. I just heard he likes weather.
He likes weather.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess we could talk about if you maybe now would be a good time to look at the nav log.
Okay. Briefing.
You can condense.
Okay. All right. So
things that are important.
We've been having drone in and around New Jersey, so there's like a bunch of TFRs that have popped up just for drones. It's from the surface. Generally, they're to 400 feet. So that's why there's all these TFRs here. That's what all of these are. So I'm just gonna skip them. All right. So looks like we have an icing air met. It's kind of way off from our route, but it's over the water. And I mean, just in general, in a single engine airplane, I'm never gonna fly.
Pretty far out there, right? And it's not along your route of flight, so.
Yeah. So we can go ahead and skip that. All right. So here's one that kind of relates to us. So this is a turbulence low air met, so it's from 0 to 6,000 feet for moderate turbulence. And we have a couple of those pretty much all in the same section. So I think this is like the northern tip of Delaware. So once we get to northern Delaware, we should be a little bit smooth. Again, high surface winds, but this is mostly just over the water, so that should be not a factor for us. Then we're going to come to our surface analysis chart. So right over here.
So you see those gray lines on there?
Yep, these lines here?
Yeah.
Okay.
So what do those kind of indicate?
So these are isobars, so these are areas of like pressure gradients. So if they're like really close together, like how they are up here in the northeast, you can expect higher surface winds and probably some turbulence. But then if you come down here, there's a lot distance between them, so you can expect maybe some smoother air.
Yeah, and then with the high and low pressure, do you remember which way those move?
So high pressure, let's see, so high pressure sinks, and it's going to be clockwise, and low pressure rises, and it spins counterclockwise.
Sorry, can you say that again?
Mm-hmm. So high pressure sinks, and it spins clockwise, and low pressure rises and spins counterclockwise.
Are you sure? And then, are there anything else to add in there?
So I guess also with a low pressure, it kind of like sucks everything up, and it flows inward. Whereas high pressure, it kind of pushes everything down and flows outward.
Mm-hmm. So that it moves. So a high pressure system moves counterclockwise.
I think it should move clockwise.
Okay, and then it also moves out and down.
Yeah. It pushes everything out and it sinks down.
Okay, so low pressure moves.
And then low pressure moves upward, inwards, and counterclockwise.
Okay, cool, nice. And then with the orange dashes, what are those?
So these are either troughs or ridges. So the trough would come about when you areas of lower pressure. So these are areas of rising air along this line, and then with the high pressure, it would be areas of sinking air.
So is it a trough or is it a ridge?
So down here, this looks like it would be a trough, just along the this lower pressure here.
Do they chart those differently?
You
need to fact check?
Good question. Yeah, that's a good question. If they are charted differently.
You want to take a moment?
Yeah, let's see. Are they charted differently?
I believe they are. Images. We want to see some images.
Oh, okay. So yeah, ridge it looks like a squiggle, and trough is a dotted line. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Back. And then you also have some looks to just be kind of like some stationary friends on there. It doesn't affect your route of flight, but anything you show a DPE, and you're opening yourself a world of questions that if he sees it, he could totally ask you a question on it. So even if it's not along your route of flight, I've had DPEs ask me like things that have nothing to do with where I'm going, but if they see it, then you're it's like you're offering it up to them on a little platter. Do you remember about like stationary fronts and how that works?
Yeah. So it's basically where a cold front and a warm front are kind of like hitting each other, and they're just kind of, as the name implies, they're staying stationary.
Yeah, because one isn't really more powerful than the other one, so they just kind of, it could either provide good or bad weather in whatever area it's in. Cool. So just kind of going back to the troughs and ridges. Which one was good weather and which one was bad weather?
The trough would be more bad weather. Just in general, lower pressure is bad weather. Yeah.
Nice. Nice. Okay, we can continue.
Okay. I guess that's it. And then the next section is METARs. Do you want me to decode a METAR?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, I guess on a check ride I shouldn't ask the TP to make me do something.
Well, they normally ask you.
Alright, so I'll just give the one for Cross Keys. So Cross Keys actually doesn't have a weather reporting station, so the nearest one is Philly. So this METAR is from Philly, and then this is when it was issued, so the 8th day of the month at 23:40. Wind 310 at 12, gusting 23, visibility 10 statute miles. A few clouds at 5,500 feet. Temperature is -3 and dew point is -16. Both of those are in Celsius. Altimeter.
I don't see M's very often at all. I don't know. That got me one time. I was like, what is this doing here?
Yeah, we've been having some cold weather recently. It's been kind of sad. Altimeter is 299.5, and then we just get some remarks. So we have a precipitation thing that it can, I think it's called a precipitation discriminator, or it can tell you the different types of precipitation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We had a peak wind at 300.27 knots at 2340 Zulu. This is sea level pressure. It's 1041. And then this is just the more, I guess, accurate temperature. So the temperature is really minus 2.8.
Yeah.
And the dew point is minus 16.1.
And then, the little, the dollar sign.
Yeah, that means that the weather station needs some sort of maintenance.
Yeah. Okay. Continue.
Okay. Into the pirate section?
Yeah.
Okay. So we got a couple pirates over here. Alright, so this one is just a routine pirate, I guess. It's just like a UA, it's not an urgent pirate. This was over in Baltimore, BWI. For runway 33. This is the time 23:43 Zulu at 500 feet. This is the type of GA6 Charlie. Not sure what kind of plane that is. But they were seeing some low level wind shear, so a gain and loss of 5 knots on final.
Okay, we can keep going.
Okay. So over this is where Philly is right here. So there's an overcast layer at 4,000 feet. With tops, that's a really small number.
Would you be going into any of that?
So, I mean, I would want to stay out of it, just due to icing concerns. So we would be going below it. So at the 4,000 feet layer, we'd want to be at like 3,500 at the most. It looks like in South Jersey and like South Delaware, there's an overcast layer at 3,500 feet. Sorry, these numbers are so small.
Yeah, no, it's okay. Just like for anybody watching, like anything that you present along your route of flight, they're just going to want to know if you are like going to go through that or not, or like what the plan is, like relevant to the altitude that you put in your nav log.
Yeah, so
just kind of explain if this is something that you'd be going through, if it's something that you'd want to avoid, or like alter your flight plan.
Yeah, so we would definitely want to be avoiding these. It looks like over here the tops are up in the flight levels, which is way higher than we'd want to be flying in a 172. So even if it's not relevant, we'll just be like, if this isn't relevant, it's not relevant. But if it is relevant, then explain how you would handle it, and that's pretty much the end of story with that. So I guess
because if you're sitting there like showing them like PIREPs at like 20,000 feet, the DP is going to be like, why? Like, why do we need to know about this unless that's going to affect you?
Yeah.
Okay.
So moving on to the next chart. This is probably a symbol that you don't see down in Florida too much. For some potential snow conditions. We also have some winds over here. This wind barb, for example, is showing that the wind's coming out of the west at 15, gusting 20. Down here in South Jersey, it's really hard to tell, but it looks like
it's like 2 red and a long black one.
Yeah, so probably 20, gusting 30, but it's
okay,
really small.
Cool. Moving on
into the TAF section. All right, so I'll just I guess I'll go through this first line here.
Okay, I think you could handle that.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
All right.
Just another thing. I'm sorry to go back just for people watching. If you're, can you scroll down to the taps again? If you are, just know how the times affect your route of flight and like which TAFs will be relevant for your flight. So it's a good idea to kind of go ahead and like decode the Zulu to your current time. Because I've had people ask me before, like, okay, well, like, does this one like is this affecting us, or is it going from here into this one? So just kind of have an idea in your head of the time, so you're not having to like think about it and figure it out. But that is all.
Okay. So coming along to the wind chart. So this is just kind of showing. So when I initially put the flight in, I didn't look at the clouds, so I put it in for 8,500 feet. So this is showing the winds aloft at 8,500. So along the route, let's see, we have some like westerly winds at 40. Yeah, pretty much everything is out of the west for the entire route, between like 30 and 40 knots. Okay.
Winds aloft.
Yep, so winds aloft. So again, this is kind of just showing what that wind chart showed.
This is started, right? Yeah.
Alright, and then
if you were is that button to undecode it? Oh no, it's just decoded. Okay. Alright.
Yeah,
I was gonna do a thing about how to read like higher level altitude. If I think sometimes people like don't know how to read those if they aren't decoded, but anyways.
Yeah, those trip me up sometimes with like the 7 and the 8 out in the fronts.
Do you want to talk about it?
Sure. So I believe you would, if the wind is greater than 100 knots. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, go ahead. You got it.
So if the wind's greater than 100 knots, then they would throw a 7 out in the front of the wind direction, and then you would subtract 5. And then if it's
50.
greater than 200, I believe it's 8, and then you'd subtract 5 again.
If it's 200 knots or greater, the wind group is coded as 99.
Okay.
So if it was, if the data was 7799, you'd subtract 50 from 77 and add 100 to 99. So it'd be like 270 at 199 or greater.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
There. All right, and then I guess the next section is just NOTAMs, and
Yeah, we can kind of skip this.
Okay.
But you would go through them, anything relevant.
Yeah, there's a million different NOTAMs, especially the en route ones. Is there anything else in the forklift briefing you want to see?
I guess just the nav log.
The nav log, okay. All right.
Basically, when I did my commercial check ride, the DPE just sat down with me after I gave him that brief, and I was like, this is the course. And then we talked about any airspace things, which I think we'll go to next. And after looking at the navlog, he pretty much just wanted to know whether or not we would make that flight or not today. So pretty much just go through, and like this is the same as your private check ride, right? Like nothing's really different. So you should kind of already know this information with the fuel, and you could get asked about like how like different things were calculated if your DPE is cool for flight, which he or she should be. But I guess we can go to the looking at like airspace throughout your for me, when I had to do my commercial planning, I did do like a long cross country, so like fuel was involved. So it was okay, like where are you going to stop for fuel? How do you determine where you stop for fuel? So this is 235 nautical miles. You're just going straight there?
Yeah, so I have this cross country just planned as like with no fuel stops.
Yeah.
One thing to note, I guess, though, is that at the airport, the destination airport, they do not provide fuel.
Yeah, that would be a problem.
Yeah. Luckily, there is this airport just a couple miles to the south of it. They do have self-serve and full-service fuel, so
Yeah.
you could get that.
Yeah, so the DPE would definitely add, that would be I know it was just practice for you just pulling up an old one for today, but just making sure that you are also thinking about like resources if you're stopping. Do you know the scenario that you'll be given for your check ride?
No, I haven't been given that yet.
No. Uh, Pretty much just like, just don't pick any airport. Pick an airport that'll work with the scenario given. For me, I needed to pick an airport that was like a pretty good FBO, just meaning they had a lot of services available. They had rental cars. There were like hotels in the area because I think it was given like I was doing like a business. I was doing a trip with someone and I'm going from like A to B, like cross country, and we're going to stay a couple days. So there are just things that you might just to be mindful of, like with the scenario. And if they give fuel, like, is it cheap fuel or is it really expensive fuel? And like, would you want to do that?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I did this flight a couple of weeks ago, and I do know that the full service fuel was like $6 a gallon, which it's actually really cheap. For
oh yeah,
yeah, up at Cross Keys, it's like $7.20 a gallon for self serve.
Nice. Okay, so are there any relevant airspace information?
Yes.
Or things that should be?
Didn't want to do that. Yeah, there's actually a lot of airspace to avoid, which is most of the reason why the route's planned like this. So I guess I can just kind of walk through what the thinking is.
Sure.
So departing out of Cross Keys, we have a Bravo shelf starting at basically 2,000, like just after departure, and then it rises to 3,500. And it tops out at 7,000 for both of those shelves. And then as you get south...
Are you filing or are you...
this will be VFR.
VFR, okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know why the sectional's not loading. It's just taking a long time, I guess. There we go. Okay. Yeah, so we have...
What altitude are you at kind of through that?
I'm sorry?
What altitude are you at through that?
Okay, so I'm gonna just I guess talk about this in terms of if the clouds are no factor, because as we saw that they were at like 3,500.
Yeah.
But for this route we'll be at 8,500. So the clouds aren't here. So departing out of Cross Keys, we are definitely going to want to get a Bravo clearance. So we'd be talking to approach, affiliate approach, request the Bravo clearance, and then if they let us into the Bravo, then we'll be able to climb to our requested altitude, or if they give us like some sort of altitude limitation, then we'll just have to follow what they say until we're clear of the Bravo. And then coming down here, we have this Delta, but it stops at 2,500. We're going to be at 8,500 by the time that we get to here, so they should be no factor. And then as we continue south, this is really where our concern starts with this restricted area. So we'd want to stay to the east of it. As well, I guess we technically could transition through it if ATC gives us permission.
Would it make... Sorry, I can't see the rest of the route, but would it make sense if you transition through it?
No, it really wouldn't.
No, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. Yeah, so we just want to stay to
I'm sure you sound like a competent pilot, but just knowing how to like find the times for the restricted.
So if you have on the sectional, like the paper sectional on the bottom, it tells you that information. And then I believe...
Yeah, I think you can get it on ForeFlight too.
Let me see. So it should be this one, I believe. I know how to do it on the iPad. I've never done it.
You might need both. Yeah.
Communication details.
We're looking for 250. Well, see, that one isn't, and then it's this. Yeah, it's the 3,500 to almost. Yeah, those aren't it.
Yeah, like I know on like the iPad app, like you could just click on it basically, and then it tells you all the information about it, like the times, the controlling agency, altitudes, things of that nature.
I don't know. Maybe try again. You don't need that one. You need the other one, right?
Oh, yeah, you cancel.
Maybe try like over the numbers. Does that work? Okay. Oh wait, there it is. There we are.
Okay, here it is, 4006. Okay, there we go. So now we have for restricted area 4006. We have our altitudes. If it's active during, like when it's potentially going to be active, the times, and then you can also, I guess, see in a NOTAM, if they like NOTAM that it's like out of the ordinary time, you can see that.
Yeah, I think you just ask them if it's hot or cold.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right, so continuing down, so we just have that out to our west, and then we have another restricted area. This one, I believe it's Wallops Island. So again, you can just click on it somehow and see that information panel. Then coming down here, we have a Charlie, which goes until 4,000 feet.
It'll be way above that, yeah.
Yeah, and then we have a Delta that goes to 25, so we'll be above that. We'll want to stay away from this restricted unless, again, ATC lets us.
Are you going to avoid the parachute area?
It's a good thing to be vigilant about it. I mean, you also don't want to overfly like a runway or a parachute jumping operation.
Yeah.
So, like, for example, like at Cross Keys, there's a pretty big jump zone over there. So they have in the remarks in the chart supplement to like stay away from a certain part of the airfield. So I would just do that here as well. Just kind of stay clear of
just don't overfly the airport. And then I think it gave altitudes as well, even for the one above it.
For the parachute jump area?
Yeah, above it. Above this one.
This one?
Yeah.
Looks like to 13,000.
Yeah.
So it might maybe like, because we're kind of like on the edge, so maybe just stay a little more east.
Yeah. Then ATC should also know if they're doing operations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I guess if you're monitoring their CTAF, you also could hear like the jump pilot say.
Yeah, ATC should know if they're up there.
All right. Yeah, so we have that restricted. I think we briefly talked about that. Then yeah, everything else is pretty much good to go. The only other kind of concern might be this water over here. So just again being single engine. If you lose your engine, you kind of want to have some options. So it might be better to hug the coast, like either this coast or this coast over here, just so you can have some land to land in if you don't have like a life raft or life vests.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why it won't show.
Do you remember just off the top of your head?
I believe it's definitely classic golf on the surface. I just can't remember if there's like the magenta ring for. Oh, here it is. I just pulled it up on my iPad. So there's that magenta ring that's surrounding it. So Echo would start at 700 feet above the surface.
And then for some reason, if you had to go into that, if you went into that warning area, is that anything like to be concerned about?
There might just be like some like military operations or like fast moving like jets, things of that nature. So you just want to be vigilant about that.
That's another thing you could click on, and it would tell you about even just on like the paper sectional too.
Yeah, Foreflight does not want to work with me today.
Does not want to work today.
Yeah, but
Do you have NextRad?
No, I don't.
No NextRad. Okay. Yeah, they just in the just over here just for the weather information section. They just want to know about limitations of onboard weather equipment. So I was going to ask you about limitations of NextRad if it was in the plane. Okay. Do you have any like personal weather minimums?
Yeah, I guess I was actually just discussing this earlier with a friend, and so the airport that I fly out of, it's kind of surrounded by trees on all ends, and it's a skinnier runway, and it's a little bit of a shorter runway, so my minimums there are a little bit stricter. So I don't really like to fly with the winds being more than 20 knots there. But if I'm coming into an airport with a longer runway, fewer obstacles around it, then the wind goes a little bit up and it's closer to 25 knots.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of clouds, it depends on the mission, really. If I'm just doing pattern work, I'm okay with the clouds being at like 2,000 feet. But if I'm doing a cross country like this, then I'd want to have some more options and I want to have more altitude. So then I'd prefer the clouds to be above like 5,000 or so.
Yeah. And then, especially if you're picking up flight following, you should be okay. But if you were just doing it VFR, not getting any help there, then that would be rather difficult. I think I would say most commercial check rides, they'll ask you for an alternate and what the plan was to get to an alternate.
Okay, so the alternate for this flight would be this airport, well, there's a couple different options. So depending on what the weather's doing, we have a Charlie over here. We have a couple different Charlie airports over here in Northern Virginia. We also have a Delta down here. So those would be good if you have like a medical emergency on board. You would want to go there, and they can have like more services available. They potentially have more approaches that you could do. So like whether it's like an RNAV approach or ILS, they may have to more runways and potentially to lower minimums.
Yeah, those look like good options. And you remember the fuel for an alternate?
So I guess if you're flying under IFR and you need an alternate,
Yes, that's an instrument question.
so that would be like you would need to be able to get to your destination and then cruise to the alternate and have 45 minutes of fuel remaining.
Yeah. Yeah. Any weather conditions that would perfect your plane's performance?
Well, yeah, I guess there'd be a couple. So if it's really hot, that would make the plane
Not hot today, right? Very cold.
Yeah, very cold. So today the plane should be performing really, really nicely. You could also have potential icing. So I guess like that would be something that we would have to take into account today. If you run into any icing conditions, that would negatively.
What are the different kinds of icing that your plane can get?
So it could be rime, clear icing, or a combination of the two, mixed icing.
Yeah. Which one are you the most afraid of?
I think clear icing would be kind of like the scariest. Because
Have
you
you ever
can't
gotten
really...
icing?
No. I've gotten carb icing.
No, never gotten icing. So what are some things that could get icing system-wise? Oh, no.
Oh, the carburetor, that would be the one of like the main things. Like if you're just flying and it's like perfectly clear VFR, you can still have the potential of picking up carb icing. If you're flying in like visible moisture, different like little probes might pick up icing quicker than other parts of the plane. So like your pitot tube will pick up icing.
Yeah. Are you pretty familiar with what clear ice is and the difference between the different kinds of icing?
Yeah, so do you want me to go through that?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so clear icing, it would be like if you just have like some water droplets on the surface of the plane and then they start freezing over. whereas rime icing would be like water hits the plane and almost instantly freezes.
Okay. Um, and like there's some other descriptions of clear icing that has to do with like the droplets.
Oh, so the super cool liquid
Yeah,
droplets?
large super droplets. Yeah. Um, and do you know the difference between if you, well, I'll start here. Do you have de-icing or anti-icing equipment on your plane?
Um, so I guess we have like some preventative measures for icing. So that would be kind of like anti-icing. So like pitot heat and carb heat would be preventative, but then it would also get rid of any icing. So if you do pick up some carb icing or some pitot icing, you can throw either of those on to get rid of it. So that would be more of like a
Do you know the
de-icing.
difference between just like what de-icing equipment is versus anti-icing equipment?
Um, no, I think maybe de-icing would get rid of the ice.
We found something. We found something. Okay, that'll be something for you to look at later.
Okay, I'm gonna note that.
Yeah, that's part of it. And another thing to talk about is I kind of rolling into like oxygen. So
Okay.
have you looked a lot at,
Yeah, so
and
if
it goes a little bit deeper in commercial
the like types of like oxygen systems.
and masks.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so
So
yeah,
everybody knows the basic oxygen reg about, 12,000 and like going up to 14 and 15, but above that.
okay, with so I guess if you're in a pressurized cabin, is that what you're looking for?
Yeah.
Okay. So above flight level 250, you need to have a 10-minute supply of supplemental oxygen for each occupant. And then above flight level 350, it depends on the how many pilots that you have in the plane. So let's see if I could remember this. So if you're a single pilot and you're above 350, you need to always be wearing the oxygen mask if the cabin is above, or the cabin pressure is above 14,000 MSL. And with a two-pilot operation, one of the pilots needs to be wearing the oxygen mask at or above flight level 410.
Yeah, there's some regs on that. And then can you just give a couple different examples of the different oxygen systems that can be used?
So you can have a continuous supply of oxygen. So this would be like a cannula that you'd wear like under your nose, and that would just be continuously supplying oxygen. There's a diluter demand oxygen system. So when you inhale, it provides some oxygen, but when you exhale, that oxygen isn't flowing. There's a pressure demand system, which is similar, but when you're at the lower pressures, that's when it's starting to give you the oxygen. And then there's another one that I can't remember the name of, but if you can wear like a pulse oximeter, and when your oxygen level gets lower, it can start providing oxygen.
Yeah, it's electrical. Okay, cool. That's pretty good. Kind of going from there, how do you know? Okay, so let's just say you're going up on a flight and you're gonna bring some aviators oxygen with you. How do you know that you're buying the right thing? Do you not confuse it with another kind of oxygen that would be maybe used for medical purposes?
I guess you would just have to look at the bottle and make sure that you're not getting like medical grade supply of oxygen. It would need to be aviation oxygen. Like you don't want any like moisture content in there. You just want it to be just like pure oxygen.
Yeah, you would want it to be like specifically meant for aviation. Typically it's green.
Okay, the like the oxygen bottle will be green.
Yeah, the bottle's typically green.
Okay,
And somebody asked me that once. I was like, oh, okay, this is
that's
different.
good to know.
Back to systems a little bit. Can you talk to me about like the pitot-static instruments in the plane?
Mhm. So there's three instruments that would work off the pitot-static system. So the airspeed indicator would work off of both from the pitot tube as well as the static source of air. And then we have the VSI, which would, well, I guess the VSI and the altimeter, they would both be working off of the static source.
Okay. And you have an alt static source?
In one of the planes that I might fly, it does, and then the other it does not.
But the other one it doesn't? Interesting. And what kind of avionics do you have in the plane?
Not much. So there's
Not very much.
yeah. So in one of the planes, it's a VFR GPS with a database from like 1999, and then in the other plane, there's and in the first plane with the GPS, it also has a VOR and an ILS, and then the other one, it just has a VOR and an ILS.
Oh, I remembered another question about oxygen.
Mm-hmm.
There's a check that there's a brochure by the FAA about oxygen equipment. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it's very good. It sounds like you have read it.
No, actually, I've not.
But there's a check that they recommend for if you're bringing oxygen on board a plane. Have you ever heard of that? It's called the price check.
How do you spell the first word?
Price. It's called it's like PRICE, and it's called the price check if you're bringing oxygen on board. There's a oxygen equipment brochure by the FAA, and it's a breakdown of all the different kinds of oxygen systems and components, and it's very good. And there's pictures, and at the bottom of that document, there's a price check. It's pressure regulator, indicator connections, and emergency, just if you were bringing oxygen on board. And then they also have the rules for the oxygen rules for higher flight levels as well. So it's a very good document. I can send it to you.
yeah, that would be great. Definitely something I'd put in my checkride binder.
Yeah, for sure. Just talking about the pitot-static system, can you explain to me how each of those instrument works, kind of briefly, potentially?
Yeah, sure. So the airspeed indicator, it takes in ram pressure from the pitot tube, and it also takes in information from the static port, because as you go up in altitude, you're going to be hitting fewer and fewer air molecules. So the taking in the information from the static source, it kind of accounts for that. And there is a diaphragm inside the airspeed indicator, and when the diaphragm kind of like fills up or starts to collapse, I guess would be.
It doesn't collapse.
Or shrinks.
Expands.
Expands. Yeah, so the air is like coming in, it's expanding, and then it's that like helps to rotate a gear, which rotates the dial, the ASI. And then we have the altimeter, and that one, it has a diaphragm inside that's filled with air at standard pressure at 2,902, and it basically just, when you have air that's coming into the altimeter that's lower than that, then the diaphragm will also expand, which again rotates, and the dial will move. And then
wait, I'm talking about the altimeter.
Yeah.
So with the altimeter, you said there's a diaphragm in there?
Or is that the one with the aneroid wafer? Okay, I always get those ones mixed up. Okay, so in the altimeter, that has the aneroid wafer, and that's filled with the air at that has
that's set, right?
Yeah, so that's set to standard pressure 2,902, and then that can as the air pressure inside of there goes down because you're climbing, then the wafer can start to expand, which moves the needle to indicate what altitude
So
you're at.
I would recommend, I found another thing. You have to go back to the altimeter.
Okay.
Sorry, that's not how that one works.
Oh, that's okay.
You're close. You're close, but you're close. Pressures are enacted on the altimeter, so on the aneroid wafer. So that's set. There's nothing going inside of that wafer. There's no air going inside of the wafer. There's just the air in the casing that is changing pressures.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And then the next one.
So that one. So I guess with the VSI, that one there would be air coming into the wafer, and there's a calibrated leak.
There's no wafer. Sorry.
Or is that the diaphragm?
Diaphragm.
One? Okay. Yeah.
There's only one wafer, and there's 2 diaphragms.
So 2 diaphragms. So the airspeed indicator in the VSI is the diaphragm, and the altimeter is the wafer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. Good. Okay. So the air, it's filling that up as you're like going up or going down, and there's a calibrated leak. So the air pressure would be just changing, and air would be flowing out through the vent, or I guess flowing also could be flowing into the vent, depending on what you're doing. And that would show like a trend on the VSI of like how the pressure is changing inside, which translates to like your vertical speed.
Yeah. With that one too, they just call it's a pressure differential instrument. So it's just reading the differential in pressure and in the calibrated leak. And it was just a little confusing when you called it a vent.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And then just knowing what happens when some of those get blocked. So do you think you would want to move into blockages, or do you think you want to do some homework on that?
I can give it a try.
Give it a try, okay.
Yeah. So
okay. Your pitot tube is let's just say, where do you want to start?
Yeah, we could start with pitot tube blockage.
Okay.
Okay, so if the pitot tube is blocked, and I'm assuming also the static port is unblocked in this scenario?
You can, yeah.
Okay, so the air pressure, it's kind of like trapped inside of the pitot tube. So as you're or I guess just as you're moving up or down, it's going to act like an altimeter.
Sorry, is the drain hole open or closed?
I guess let's just imagine like the whole casing is closed.
Closed. Okay.
Mm-hmm. So that one's going to act kind of like an altimeter because the air is already trapped inside. So it's like kind of like a set pressure.
So is it in a climb or in a descent? What happens?
So as you're climbing, the air.
It'll read something in a climb.
Yeah, so it'll show that your airspeed is increasing.
Higher in a climb, lower in a descent.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you're talking about if your drain hole was to be open, you just flip it. It's lower in a climb, higher in a descent.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, and then there's some other ones for the VSI and the altimeter.
Yeah, so
if you were to, there's a really good chart that I'll share with you that I pretty much just kind of like memorize that, and like once you have that, you'll probably never the rest of it will be asked for the other like instruments as well. But like that's kind of I think the main one that people get tripped up on.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you were to have an alternate static source, just know whether you have a POH or a PIM, that there should be a chart in there for how the readings change.
Okay. Yeah, I remember the plan I used for instrument. I remember seeing the chart in there.
Yeah. And then if you I don't know. I'm getting a little into instrument here. All right,
Mhm.
I will carry on.
Okay.
Do you remember the difference in airspeeds definitions? Like
Um,
indicated, calibrated.
yeah, so indicated, I mean, just basically just shows what the airspeed indicator is showing.
Yep.
Calibrated airspeed would account for any like instrument installation errors, and there would
Yeah.
be a chart in the POH for that.
Mhm.
Um, did you want me to talk about like true airspeed and ground speed?
Yeah.
Okay, so true airspeed would be indicated, or I guess indicated airspeed, corrected for altitude and temperature. And ground speed would be true airspeed corrected for like winds.
Yeah. In my head, I do like ICTG. I don't know why I remember that, but like ICTG, and then I kind of like go that way.
Oh, okay, yeah,
Um,
makes sense.
yeah. So, true airspeed was calibrated airspeed corrected for altitude and non-standard temperature.
Okay, okay, so it's calibrated, not indicated. Okay,
Yeah, because indicated is at the beginning.
okay,
So
that's
I
easy.
like I do IC like TG. Yeah. That's just some like little dumb acronym I came up with
Hey,
to
if it
just kind
works,
of
it
remember
works.
like the flow. Um, okay. How do you feel about gyros?
Yeah, we could talk about that.
We can talk about gyros. What's the difference between like rigidity in space and precession?
So rigidity in space, it basically just means that it's kind of just like staying as is, and it's gonna like if you turn, it's gonna stay upright, or it's gonna want to
Mhm.
tend to stay upright. Whereas precession, over time, it's gonna want to move, um, just like a kind of like a spinning top. Like the top of it's just gonna want to move around.
Yeah. You have a little bit of a better definition for precession.
Um, no.
Something about 90 degrees.
Oh, so I guess if you like put a force on a gyroscope, then the resultant force is going to be like 90 degrees ahead of
90
you.
degrees in the direction of rotation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yep. Cool. And then you remember what instruments operate off of those principles?
Yep. So that would be the heading indicator and the attitude indicator and the turn coordinator.
Okay. Is the turn coordinator operate off of a gyro?
Yeah, that would
Or
be the
how
one.
is that one powered?
That one typically it's a an electric
Okay.
gyroscope.
Nice. Okay, cool. And that's if you did have gyros, what do they operate off of?
So from the heading indicator and the um or the attitude indicator, those are both vacuum driven.
Vacuum and yep. Okay, cool. Um um Going up to 8,500 feet, what are some things you have to worry about?
So I guess you might want to start thinking about hypoxia and some hypoxic symptoms, just
Okay.
being a little bit higher. Even though you're not required to have oxygen, you can still potentially get some hypoxic symptoms.
And what kind of hypoxia would that be?
Hypoxic.
Hypoxic, yeah.
Mhm.
Hypoxia. Do you remember the other ones?
Yep. So there's histotoxic. So that's if you're like drinking, or like smoking, things of that nature. Um, there is.
Hold up.
Was that one wrong?
Rephrase. Think about that again.
Histotoxic, hypoxia.
Okay, start. You were off to a good start, and then you went somewhere you shouldn't have gone.
Oh no. So there's
Okay.
hypoxic hypoxia, so that's with altitude.
Okay.
Um, histotoxic hypoxia.
Or okay, so it happens with altitude, but what's like the definition of hypoxic hypoxia?
So there's just the volume of air or the volume of oxygen is lower, and it's harder to absorb the oxygen.
Okay. Work on that's a circle back to work on,
Okay.
or you think in your notes. And then histotoxic does not have to do with smoking.
Okay.
So you were right about the drinking,
Okay.
and smoking has to do with another one.
Was that hypemic? Okay.
Is that what?
Okay, so hypemic hypoxia would be with smoking, and then there's stagnant hypoxia, and that's kind of if like your blood is just like not flowing properly in your body, like if you're pulling G's or
Yep. Yeah.
heart attack.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Cool. And so are you going out during the day for the flight? Or is it a night flight?
This is a day flight.
Day flight? Okay, cool. Do you remember anything about scuba diving?
Yes. I have it in my passenger briefing.
New Jersey.
Yeah, there's not a lot of scuba diving going on up here, but let me just pull up my passenger briefing just in case, for whatever reason.
Passenger briefing? Oh boy.
Yeah,
I don't want to hear your briefing.
I have a little
tell me about diving.
So if you're flying above 8,000 MSL, then you should wait 24 hours to go flying, like at that altitude. If you're below 8,000 MSL, then it's going to be dependent on the type of ascents that you had. I don't know anything about scuba diving, but if you do an uncontrolled ascent, then you want to wait 12 hours before flying, and if you do a controlled ascent, then you want to wait 24 hours.
You said uncontrolled was
12 hours.
12, and controlled was 24. Okay. And with those, it is really easy to figure out what the difference is between a controlled and an uncontrolled ascent. Do you know what they do for that?
No, I have no idea.
Okay. It's pretty easy to just like look into. It just if they're going straight up or if they're making stops or not.
Okay.
That's like the difference. And then and you're not really getting any night illusions on this flight. Oh, I totally forgot to ask you something for your flight planning, and that's what reg do you look at for flight planning?
91-103.
Yeah, and that's NW Crafty. I completely that went way over my head. Oxygen, there's something in here about time of useful consciousness. Do you know what that is?
Yeah, so it's like how long you have to basically like do normal things like fly an airplane and just be able to like think properly.
Yep. Yeah. And then on here too, there's a line item in here. It just says differences between an identification of aviators breathing oxygen and other types of oxygen. I know we were like talking about that a little bit later, but that's where that came from. What about like some symptoms of hypoxia?
So I guess it depends from person to person, but generally you can have feelings of euphoria. You might have some dizziness. Your fingernails might become blue. Kind of like you can also feel like drunk, just like kind of like confused and not really know what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah, those are all good. I'm a bad DPE. I don't know where systems is in the task. Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, we pretty much went through that. You have any like hydraulics in your plane?
The brakes.
Just the brakes?
Yeah, I think.
What about your nose, like around the nose?
Oh yeah, the nose strut also has some hydraulic fluid.
Is that hydraulic for you, or is that rubber?
It's hydraulic.
It's hydraulic. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Mm-hmm. Just some other things that he could ask you is just like scenario kind of based questions. Could really come up at any point, but like, if you, I don't know why DPEs love to talk about icing, but that's like, they love to talk about icing. If you were to have, if you were to think you were to get icing in your plane, and it was structural, what would you do?
I mean, I guess it would depend on like what's going on, like why am I getting the icing? So if I'm in a cloud, the first thing I'd want to do is try to get out of the cloud. I'd also, of course, want to turn on carb heat and turn on pitot heat just in case those things are gonna start getting icing. But like the biggest thing would just be to descend and get down to warmer air.
Yeah, descend, warmer air. I guess turning around essentially. And then would you change any of your, if you had flaps in, would that be something that you change?
So I guess it depends on what's happening. So if I already have flaps in and then I start to get icing, I wouldn't put the flaps. Like I wouldn't put any more flaps. If I like put the flaps down and then I get into like a tailplane stall, then I'd want to lift the flaps back up.
We pretty much touched a little bit on everything. I think that is pretty much it. I think the only thing I could have gone deeper on was giving you examples for if a situation was holding out or not.
Okay.
So I think that would just be the thing to look at examples on, but in general, the easiest way to figure out if the situation is if you can do it or not is by who owns the plane. This concludes this. Good luck. I think you did pretty well.
Thank you.
You know, I feel like the commercial check ride isn't that bad. It's mostly just like the holding out scenarios that can get tricky.
Well, actually, I guess maybe a slight follow up. If you don't know, like, do you think it's acceptable to just say I would talk to the FSDO or like an aviation lawyer?
Yeah. I mean, they're gonna want an answer from you, but that's completely fine to go to the FSDO.
Okay.
Okay. Well, we can end the recording.